All right, thanks, Pat. Joining me now is Jeff Cox here from ESPN and SB Nation. Jeff, entertaining first period there.
Yeah, really entertaining. I thought Hingham came out flying and they were physical enough, and then Malden Catholic kind of took some poor decision penalties there at the midway mark and led Hingham back in the game.
Yeah, Paul and I were talking a little bit about that towards the end of the first period. Is that MC had a little bit of a history last year of taking those penalties and really, throwing off the flow of their game and not allowing their talent really to shine because they're in the penalty box killing those penalties.
Right. I think it's a little bit of some of their talented guys are getting held up, and it's like the frustration. The Nazarian penalty was kind of a little bit of a frustration after they just gotta realize that they're marked guys, and that every game that Malden Catholic plays, the opposition is going to give them their best shot, and they've got to just realize that they're going to be marked, and they got to stay out of avoid the frustration penalties.
Yeah, and I think Coach Messina, the way he preaches that type of defensive play, and maybe there is a little bit of clutching and grabbing going on when MC's on the ice, but Hingham can frustrate a team like that, and with their style of play. Let's go back and look at game one too. I know you were here for that Austin Prep St. Mary's game. I was really impressed by St. Mary's. It's the first time I had seen them this year. I know they had lost 3 games in a row coming into today's matchup, but what a super third period they played.
Well, they played great. They didn't allow that goal at the end of the second to affect them, and they could have had all the momentum going Austin Prep's way, and they kind of hung on, and then they scored that opportunistic goal, and obviously Bailey McBurney was just terrific.
Yeah, both goaltenders really shined in that one. A lot of scouts here today, obviously for the more prominent teams from across the state playing in this very classy tournament here. With Malden Catholic as the host team. What do you expect we'll see in the second period? I mean, I've got to believe Coach McLean's probably going to rattle a few cages in there in between periods.
Yeah, I think Malden Catholic will come out stronger, but I think Hingham's the physical type of team that maybe Malden Catholic hasn't really seen. They faced a short-handed Mount St. Charles team that was without their entire second line, just not what they're used to, and then they saw a Franklin team that's kind of in between Division II and Division I, and so I think this is obviously a step up in competition, and they're going to have to be ready and come out and play, match Hingham's physicality and let the guys like Philippe and Nazarian and Sifferlin, work their magic.
Yeah, you're right, Jeff. They certainly have their goal scorers up and down that roster of Malden Catholic, but if Hingham can keep the physicality as you noted, heading into the second period all tied at 1 here. It should be a very interesting second period. Both teams will play again tomorrow. Somebody's going to go and face Austin Prep in the championship game. Do you see either team matching up better or worse against Austin Prep?
I think, obviously, the whole state wants to see Malden Catholic and Austin Prep tomorrow. The 1 versus 2 and the ESPN Boston rankings, and kind of the 2 teams with the most prolific players, but. Hingham's got a senior goalie that's their captain. He's kind of been their leader. He could steal one if Malden Catholic's not careful. But I think Malden Catholic will come out on top, and I think it'll be a great game tomorrow when Austin Prep and Malden Catholic face off.
Yeah, a little bit of a rematch from last year's state final championship game over at the Garden, where Malden Catholic did prevail over Austin Prep. Austin Prep, a very young team last year, still fairly young this year, I think with only 2 seniors on the roster, but I think they'd be excited to face Malden Catholic tomorrow.
Absolutely. I talked to Cam Russo after the game, and he said that Coach Finicaro was really upset with how some of the guys didn't come to play, and he said that we were going to change that for tomorrow, and I think he's one of their leaders on the team. He's, besides Carpenter, he's their best offensive threat, and obviously I think whoever faces them, Austin Prep's going to have the advantage in the goaltending with Harris.
Yeah, Elijah played a great game there, and Santilli, like you said, senior goalie here, looking to steal one for Hingham. I did notice that Coach Finicaro made some changes there in the third period, shuffled the lines, both offense and defense.
Right.
So the pairings were very different. So, that message is probably being heard loud and clear in the locker room with the Cougars.
Right. I think they started the game with Carpenter and Russo on separate lines, and in the third period they were obviously playing together. And they're not as deep as some of the other teams, BC Highs and the Malden Catholics, but those two kids are special players, especially Carpenter. And I think it's a young enough team that Finicaro knows that they're going to be there in the end. They're going to make the tournament. They're going to make the Super 8. That he's just trying to try a few things out and see what works well. As they get into February and start worrying about the Super 8.
Yeah, and I hope the team gels. And I know you were down in Falmouth last year. I was down in Falmouth last year for that tournament where Austin Prep did kind of flip that switch.
Yeah.
And they're going to need to. BC High, we've seen them a couple of times. We did their game last weekend. Obviously, they're coming off a big win over St. John's Prep the other night. A St. John's Prep team that handled Hingham just recently as well. So, from what you've seen, I know it's early on in the season, but, is BC High maybe the team to beat, or do you think we're looking at Malden Catholic and Austin Prep?
I still think Malden Catholic's the team to beat, but I think their goaltending might be their only area of concern, whereas I think BC High's got a tremendous sophomore goalie and Brandon Faisant. He replaced Cronin, that everyone's worried about them in the goal, and he had 3 shutouts in his first 3 games as a varsity starter. And they've got some really good defensemen from Shea and Roach and Topham. Those 3 kids can move the puck up ice. Their transition game is as good as the transition game from the point that I've seen. And they got some scores. They're obviously well coached with Coach Flaherty as always. I think Catholic Memorials, they don't have a Liam Coughlin obviously like they did last year, but they've got some players that I think will keep them around the top 10. And so I saw Central Catholic play Winchester the other night, and Central Catholic, they don't have the star that some of the other teams have in name power, but they've up and down the lineup, everyone can skate. And they've got a senior
Catholic is always flown under the radar going into every Super 8, and they're one of those teams that sometimes has to play in to get in, and they do very well against teams like Malden Catholic and Austin Prep. So they're a team that we'll keep an eye on. Certainly with at MassHSHockey.com, and really appreciate you joining us in between periods here, Jeff.
Thanks for having me.
Look forward to an exciting second period, hopefully as exciting as that first period was. And we'll look forward to reading your hockey updates on ESPN and your college hockey on SB Nation, following Hockey East. So again, thanks for your time.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, so Paul's going to join me back here for the start of the second period. We've got about 20 seconds left in intermission here. Again, Hingham Harborman 1, Malden Catholic 1 at the end of the first period. And we'll be back to you live with the second period shortly.